Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Deb Calvert joining us. Deb, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I am honored to be here with you and your audience.
Well, let's do this. So for those who aren't familiar with your work, just take a moment and explain what you do.
I have worked in sales my entire career, and I do buyer-side research as well as sales coaching and sales training. And I also work in the leadership space. So I just put out a new book, and I co-authored it with two gurus from leadership, two very well-known people, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. And it's the first time I've ever actually brought both of my worlds together, sales and leadership. So that's all new for me. It's very exciting.
Nice. So let's go back. How did you get into sales to begin with?
I think I was probably destined to it. I didn't know that for the longest time, but I've always liked asking questions. I've always liked helping people, and I've always liked brainstorming ideas and getting creative. So I did some other things first, but sales was always in the background. Even when I was a kid, I was selling campfire candy and winning scholarships to Camp Shawnee, where I wanted to go every summer, and I was really, really good at it. And I think just very naturally, it fit all of my skills that I enjoyed, and I was good at it. I liked it.
The way that you just described sales right now is very interesting, because I think a lot of people would not describe sales in the way that you just did, right? I mean, you talked about like kind of problem solving and asking questions, where a lot of people have this mindset that sales, it's like a little bit of a bad word, right? It's often an uncomfortable word for people. Just what would you say to those people? And I guess I'm also really interested, like, where do you think that developed for you? I mean, not everyone just is born and says, okay, I'm going to go start selling candy. Is there something like an influence around them or an experience that they had? So first of all, how would you respond to people who may be thinking about sales in a little bit of a different light compared to the way that you just described it? And then let's explore maybe where that came from for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because you're right. I do define selling very differently. And I hope people will abandon those old stereotypical ways of selling that make them feel icky or pushy or like they're doing something to people, because that's not selling. That's manipulating and forcing, and it's not helpful. To really be able to guide people to the place they want to go, to equip them with solutions you can provide that are helpful to them, you don't want to do all those things that are typically associated with selling. You can abandon them entirely and instead choose leadership behaviors like the ones I described in others. That's what our most recent buyer research proved to us, is that buyers respond much more to people who engage with them as leaders versus as stereotypical sellers. So that's that part of it. Where it came to me, I think the original resource and source of sales teaching for me was my mom. She was in the Marine Corps. She was one of the first U.S. women Marines to be in a role for recruiting more women Marines. And that was basically a selling role. So when I was out there selling campfire candy, she was my sales coach, and she would tell me things. She would say things like, now, Debbie, you should ask questions and let people tell you why they might want candy. Don't you tell them, you ask them instead. So here's this little, imagine it, like 5 and 6-year-old kid at your doorstep with a box of candy asking you things like, with the holidays approaching, what other kinds of gift items do you need? So she would make me imagine put myself in their shoes and empathize with the kinds of things might be interesting to them. And I did go about it very differently from day one.
Well, I love that example. And what I find interesting is that I think all of us are actually salespeople. It's just that in many cases, people don't know that they're selling. I mean, if we look at whether it's an interaction with your child or a spouse or at the workplace, let's say in the corporate world, I mean, on even a daily basis, we all are selling to some degree. We all want to achieve an outcome or a goal. And typically we're going to ask some questions or try and position things in a way that will help us to get closer to the outcome that we want. But I think you're right. It is this mindset or just kind of this belief around the word sales that makes people feel very uncomfortable and kind of shun away from it. Why did you decide to become a sales consultant?
Well, that was 12 years ago when I went into business for myself. I had been at a Fortune 500. I had moved my family across the country to take that job just 3 years prior. And I'd worked in 31 markets. It was fantastic, overseeing sales and sales training. And when the company closed, I wasn't really in love with the idea of moving again. We had just gotten settled. I had 4 job offers. I was getting down to the wire. I needed to pick one of them. But I literally woke up one day with the question in my mind, I wonder if any of them would take me on as a consultant instead of taking me on as an employee. I called all 4 that day. 3 out of the 4 said yes within a couple of days. And that's how I went into business.
Talk to me a little bit more about how you actually did that, because this is a situation that I hear a lot from consultants that they encounter, where they receive interest from a prospective client, but really that company actually just wants to bring them on as employees or contractors and take all of their time. So how did you respond to or reach out to those companies, and how did you position it and structure it so that essentially they would be consulting clients and not just a one kind of client contract or an employee?
Well, it was all about understanding their needs and talking to them about their needs. So I didn't call them and say, I don't really want to take the job, but I'll consult for you. It's inconvenient. I felt all those things. I was thinking all those things. But instead, I just sort of replayed in my mind what I had learned during the interview process. And I called and I said things like, the work that you described for me, some of that seems very temporary. What do you feel like is the long-term need for a person in this position? Or I knew because of the industry that I was in, newspapers, that the outlook was a bit bleak. So I asked questions like, what would be the benefits to you of not having an FTE with benefits that you'd have to carry, and instead having someone that, as things ebb and flow with our industry and as budgets may continue to be slashed, what are the benefits to you of having something a little more temporary, but still exactly what you're looking for now? And I help them to envision it and to see the benefits of it.
Some people might say, isn't that being a little bit too direct? How would you respond to that?
I think it's perfectly okay to be direct as long as your intent is about helping other people. I did want to help myself in that situation, but I also wanted to help those 4 companies. I was going to have to pick one. I thought, here's a way where I can potentially help all 4 of them. I'm down the road all this far to the point of a job offer, so I knew a lot about them and I felt a bit of a connection to them, or I would never have gotten to that stage. What you say, whether you're challenging someone or floating new ideas with someone, or even telling someone maybe there's a better way, as long as your intent is to help them and it's not only self-serving, I think people are fine with it. And you should be too. Otherwise, you're going to withhold good stuff that could be useful to others.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's such a great point. We're all in this business. We do what we do because we want to help. We want to add value for others. And if there's someone that we've identified that has a problem and we can help them to solve it, it would be a disservice of us to not offer them our help and to find ways to support them. What do you think, Deb?
I couldn't agree more. We're all put here for a reason, right? In this moment in time, whatever it is. To me, I believe there's a reason, and I've always liked helping people and making a difference. That's just the intrinsic motivator to me, that buzz of feeling like I made a difference. And if I don't put it out there, I can't make a difference. If I do put it out there and you reject it, I still get to walk away from that situation feeling like I did my best. And I wouldn't want to compromise my best and take your business in a way that doesn't help you.
Definitely. So you walked away from that experience picking up 3 new clients, all first clients for you as a consultant. After that, how did you then get your next client?
Oh, I made rules for myself. I had this nice severance package, so I had a little bit of a runway, but I made rules for myself, and they were rules like, you can't have all your clients be from the newspaper industry because it's going down. Mm-hmm. That was a bleak picture because of what I came out of from corporate. Of course, that was not entirely true. I told myself, not just work my network where I knew people, but I had to make sure that I could still go out and sell to people that never heard of me. And I needed to make a certain dollar figure. So I had those 3 rules. I'm happy to say that within the first 3 months, I completed all those check boxes. And so I decided I'd keep doing it.
Let's get a little bit more tactical then. What did you do at that time? I mean, specifically, you said that you had to go out, you wanted to land clients outside of the industry where you had the 3 other clients, the newspaper business. What did you specifically do to get in front of people who you didn't know previously?
Well, the first one was an accident because I had given myself a year to do this and I hadn't started at all on pursuing other clientele yet. But my first non-newspaper opportunity happened because I was at O'Hare Airport in Chicago on my way back from Syracuse going to San Jose. In the gate area waiting for the airplane, I ran into someone who I used to work with in the early days of that corporate role. So 2.5, 3 years ago. We barely worked together, barely knew each other, but we recognized each other and started talking. And he told me that he was at a brand new job. He was overseeing human resources and he was about to promote somebody with no training background into a training role. And I asked him what concerns he had. This was just all conversation. He started telling me about some of the concerns and some of the needs that she might have. And I said, gosh, I wonder if there's some way I can help you. Here's what I'm doing these days. And that was Driscoll's, the International Berry Company. And it led to a lot of network. And now I've worked with over 100 ag industry clients and growers and shippers and suppliers. And so it was a very fortuitous accidental meeting.
Yeah, it's interesting how those things happen. So as you've built your business, you can see the ripple effect. Oftentimes it's just about reaching that initial tipping point where things seem to gain more momentum and become easier in terms of generating business. But now if you kind of look back on everything that you've done to grow your business, what have you found to be the most effective way to generate leads for your business?
Great question, because I've tried everything, inbound and outbound. I have lots of content marketing strategies. I still believe all those things work. I haven't done anything that is discarded. You have to tweak it, of course, but the number one thing still is picking up the phone, calling someone that you've been referred to. So asking for referrals, getting to know people, and then not being afraid to pick up the phone and say, so-and-so suggested that I call you, and here's why, and I'd like to talk with you. Can we set some time?
Right. A lot of people might be hearing that and kind of trembling a little bit with the idea of picking up the phone. Oftentimes we hide behind technology these days, right? It's just easier to try something through an email or a LinkedIn message and not actually have to pick up the phone. So let's try and give people here a little bit more, maybe specific steps they can take to increase their confidence around this and just feel more comfortable. Starting with, you said, okay, let's get a referral. So what should someone do if they have, let's say, a whole bunch of people they're connected to, whether it's on LinkedIn or just through their email database? What's the best approach that they should take to reach out to those people to ask for a referral? Because I think a lot of the inertia, a lot of the challenge or the hesitation that people have around asking for referrals, Deb, is just like, I have to ask someone to do something. Isn't that an imposition? Isn't that me being too direct or just too strong and pushy and salesy? So what would you tell someone who recognizes they probably have a bunch of people in their network or people they've connected with on LinkedIn? They haven't really had a conversation with them for some time. What can they do to actually start getting more referrals?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Well, I think you'll like my answer because it starts with mindset. And I know that you addressed that in your book, The Elite Consulting Mind. Mindset is, I've got the right intent. I'm going to help someone. Mindset includes, I have the right to ask because I'm about to ask if I can help someone that this person knows and likes. And mindset is understanding the law of reciprocity. I've done a lot for you. You want to give something back to me. So me asking and accepting your help is actually something that benefits both of us. If I've done my job well and done a good service for you, you wish that there was some way you could thank me, and you'll be delighted to give me this introduction.
Right. And when you go into that process, are you personally expecting a specific result? I mean, do you set that up in your mind that, okay, my goal from this conversation is to get a referral? Or are you going in just with the idea and the mindset of, you know what, I'm just going to reach out. I'm going to see if I can help, see if maybe there's something that I can do to benefit both parties here. Like, what is the mindset that you have specifically when you do this?
Well, first of all, I do think of them more as introductions than referrals. So I equip the person I'm asking for something more than a vague, hey, if you know anybody who has needs for sales training, would you send them my way? Right? That doesn't work that well. Mm-hmm. That feels like an imposition because then they have to do all the work of thinking. But when I say to them, you know, I noticed on LinkedIn that you are connected to Michael Zapersky. So I'd like to meet him. He's somebody that I think I might really be able to help out with some sales training, similar to what I provided for you. And since you know Michael and I haven't met him yet, would you mind just introducing me to him and letting him know that I'm interested in talking to him and I think I can help him?
Got it.
So I've just given you the script and I've told you what it's all about and I've told you who to contact and introduce me to.
Well, clearly you've done a very good job because here we are today. All right. So that makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you offering some tactical steps here for people to take. And I hope that everyone listening does start to implement those. What about your marketing today? I know that you also write blog posts, you have books. You mentioned there's one that just came out. You can, tell us a little bit more about that. But in terms of your marketing mix and your approach to sales and prospecting and generating a pipeline of business, what does that look like today? And how is that different compared to maybe the earlier days before your business was at the point where it's at right now? I'm just wondering, oftentimes people wonder about like percentages, right? Are you spending more time on inbound, less on outbound? Like, how would you kind of give an overview of what you're doing today and compare that to what you did earlier on?
In the early days, of course, my company was much smaller. I didn't have as many trainers, didn't have as many opportunities to work with all the customers that I do now. So my marketing has evolved as my business has scaled. I think if I were to go back and do something different earlier, it would be stepping sooner into a more visible role as a blogger and somebody who's got podcasting and other opportunities like this one. I held back from that at first, thinking, there are people out there who know more than I do, who do more than I do. I don't need to be in the public eye. I didn't even take speaking engagements at the beginning. And then I realized that I had a frustration with my business overall that marketing could solve. I went into this business called People First Productivity Solutions. I went into it with a very specific mission, which was to help people develop and get better so that they could help their businesses get better. And I realized if I could reach more people, I might be able to advance that mission farther. So that idea about wanting to reach people became the engine that drove the marketing because those two things went together. And the media that I've used to reach more people has also been the marketing for the company.
Would you say that you're spending then more time on content creation and what we call, people label as inbound as opposed to outbound direct prospecting, asking for referrals, making calls and so forth? What would you say the percentages are today for you?
They were out of whack a few years ago. I was spending way too much time on content creation and being the out in front person for the company. And it was taking away time that I wanted to do outbound calling and instructional design of new programs and sales coaching in field and research. It was taking time away from all of that. So I hired a digital marketing agency and they now handle most of the inbound strategy.
I'm really glad to hear that you did that a little bit later on, not at the beginning of your business. Oftentimes consultants think, well, I'm not a marketing person. I should just offload my marketing to some agency or someone else too early in the process without developing clarity around who their ideal clients are and getting a really good marketing message in place and setting the real foundation for success. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. And the other thing that it's important to do first is to find your voice because it has to be authentic. And if I had turned everything over to a marketing agency too early, it would have been them. And they would be shaping my business because it would be their voice. Having my own voice and having a body of work that said, hey, here's what I do, gave them opportunities. Now, I still do my own writing. I just do it differently. I record it and I send it to them and they transcribe and edit and make it look nice and put the keywords in to optimize it for search engines and all of that stuff. But they would not be able to appropriately edit and headline and choose strategies for me if I didn't have a strong point of view and voice that I communicated to them.
Definitely. So Deb, all consultants encounter challenges when building their business. What stands out for you as one big challenge that you can't forget?
For me, it is that I have to adjust over these next 10 years or so because I want to have a business I can sell instead of it being just me. And I'm still in the position of being too much the brand. I need to have other ones of my trainers and my content become the brand so it's more sellable and it's not just me.
I love that you shared that. Let's just dig into that for a few minutes here. When did you start thinking about that? I mean, is that something, did you have an exit in mind years ago, or is this something just more recently that you started to pay attention to and think about?
I started thinking about that on my 50th birthday when somebody said, so are you going to retire in 5 years or 10? Because I had said the words early retirement. Right. And I thought about, okay, what does retirement look like? And I realized that I needed to have something here that I could sell because that would set me up for retirement. And then maybe it could be fewer years than going all the way to 65.
Interesting. And so right now, specifically, what have you identified as, I mean, you mentioned that you're too kind of central in the brand and the content and all that, but in terms of specific steps that you are looking at taking or that you know that you need to accomplish for you right now, what are just a few that stand out?
Well, it's about the brand. So there's some ego involved. I have to be okay with it not being Deb Calvert, but with it being the Discover Questions workshop or the Stop Selling and Start Leading movement or the Workplace Conversations program. Those have to get the brand, and my name doesn't have to be on them at all. They can be their own brand. And the more I can push that from behind the scenes, the better off I am.
Got it. Clearly you have a lot going on, right? You're building up this business so that you can sell it at some point. You have trainers that are involved. You're writing books. There's a lot that you have that is keeping you busy, clearly. What are you doing to stay at the top of your game? Do you have a specific routine or any habits that help you to stay sharp and focused and productive?
Two things that come to mind right away. First of all, I deliberately have an incredible network. I help people out as a member of their network, and they help me out. And that keeps me at the top of my game because I read the things that I share. I don't just curate the content and share it randomly. I read everything that I share, and I share a lot. I founded something called the Sales Experts Channel, which has about 300 and some odd, maybe 10 webinars on it now, produced by over 100 sales experts. And I listen to just about every single one of those, and not when they're live, but when I'm walking or when I'm doing something else in the background. I want to learn from all of my peers in my network. And the second thing that I do is I'm a really prolific reader. I've always been a big reader. And when new books come out about leadership or sales or something related, I am pretty quick to go out and get them. And I used to read for 3 years running. I read a book a day, a business book a day. This year I switched because I was missing fiction. So now I'm not reading as many business books.
How do you read a book a day?
You speed read a bit, but I don't know. Maybe I don't sleep as much as a lot of people do. I just don't need to.
How many hours do you typically sleep? 5
or 6.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
And so for you, how long does it take when you're doing a book a day? Like how long would that actually take? How many hours would it take you to read a book?
I try to set the time limit at about 90 minutes. And there are some big books that can't make it in that period of time. Some I finish earlier, but I'm scanning and I'm highlighting things that matter to me. And sometimes I'll take notes because that helps me remember.
Is there a specific method to speed reading that you have found to be more effective than others?
Start with the table of contents. If there are things that you think you know, look at those first just to verify that you know them. And then the things that are new. Always look for what's new, what's different, what you haven't heard. And don't dismiss the things that are different from the way you look at them. Those are the most important ones to look at.
Are you actually going page by page, or once you kind of look at the table of contents, you just pick and say, okay, I don't need this section at all. It's just the overview. I'm going to really dive into the details of this specific section, and maybe I'll read this. So you're maybe essentially reading 50% of the actual contents, or are you reading the whole 100%?
I'm scanning. So I don't dismiss anything because that's a trap. That's overconfidence bias. If you think you know something and you don't at least verify that, you miss out. So I just want to see if there's a different way that people are saying things or looking at things. So I'll at least scan. If it's all pretty much what I know or believe, then I don't have to read the whole thing. The parts where they differ from what I'm thinking, I'll read that 100%. And that usually ends up being, I would say, more than 50% of a book that I read closely and sometimes reread because I want to absorb it.
Great tips. Thank you for that. I've noticed that you've written a fair bit on the topic of like open-ended questions and really digging deep to understand what the buyer is thinking and feeling. And these are critical for sales. Yet I've observed that often consultants simply stay at the surface level, right? They don't really dig deeper. They'll ask a question, just move on to the next question. But the real value is in going deep. It's like peeling back the layers of the onion to really understand at the core what the buyer is thinking and feeling about. What are your thoughts on this? Why do you think that people so often just stay at the surface level with their questioning and don't go deep?
Well, it's because we look for the first clue that there's something we can sell to this person, and then we pounce. And that's unsatisfying to buyers. It's very obvious when we're doing that. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it works against us. That's the stereotypical sales behavior we need to set aside. What we should be doing when we hear that first clue is letting our natural curiosity be our guide. Probe a little bit. Find out some details. Find out if that's something the buyer even values. Is it important to them? How does it stack up compared to other things that might be more important? And when you look at it from those angles, when you take even 5 or 10 extra minutes to ask a few more questions to understand it in depth, you have more insights. You've built up more trust because now you're different from other salespeople who do pounce. And you have a trust that's being established. And the people that we know, like, and trust are the ones we're more likely to want to buy from, especially those who engage us in a two-way dialogue, which if you aren't going off a script of questions and not responding with follow-ups, you have a much better chance of having a true two-way dialogue.
Certainly the case. Deb, this has been a really enjoyable conversation. I know there's so much more that everyone can learn from you. So what I'd like to do is to direct them to where they can learn more about you, your book, and so forth. What's the best place for people to connect with you, to learn more about your book, your work, and so forth?
I'll meet people wherever they are. If you're on LinkedIn, find me. I'm Deb Calvert. If you're on Twitter or Facebook, People First PS is the handle in those places. The books, the first one was Discover Questions, Get You Connected. So if you want to know more about questions, that's the one for you. The second one is Stop Selling and Start Leading. And it's about integrating leadership behaviors in order to be more effective in selling. It's great for business owners, entrepreneurs, salespeople. As you said, Michael, everybody sells. And if you just want to email me, if you want to talk one-to-one, you'll find that on the website, which is peoplefirstps.com. PS stands for Productivity Solutions. People and first are spelled out. People First PS. And I hope that folks will follow up with me. There's nothing I enjoy more than follow-up conversations.
Well, we'll have all this linked up. If you go to consultingsuccess.com, just type in Deb Calvert, you'll find obviously the interview that you're listening to right here, but also the full transcript, the show notes, the links, and everything there so you can learn more about Deb and her work. Deb, thank you again so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Michael. Great questions. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.